this is Speaker Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be the 4th edition in our movie face-offs. This is where we look at 2 movies of a similar genre, released roughly at the same time, and we have an overall debate and comparison as to which movie is superior. So in this edition we will look at both Deep Impact and Armageddon. Both movies were spectacular disaster films where planet Earth is under threat from both comets and asteroids. Coming first out of the gate on May 8th, 1998, Deep Impact had a fine cast example from Morgan Freeman, Robert Duvall, Tia Leoni, Elijah Wood, and it was directed by Mimi Leader. Following literally 2 months later as a major summer blockbuster, Armageddon was released on July 1st, 1998 and had an even more prolific casting with back then superstar Bruce Willis, starring alongside Ben Affleck, Liv Tyler, Billy Bob Thornton, Steve Buscemi and Will Patton. The 2 movies are often debated as they both represent opposite ends of the movie making spectrum. Deep Impact is a much more grounded, emotional approach, focusing on character reaction and reflection. Armageddon was an unashamed balls-to-wall spectacle, but when we look at both films, which one was overall superior? When taking into account the first element, which is the story, it's actually a bit closer than what a lot of people may think. In terms of a plot setup, both are very similar, is that we focus on a group of astronauts, or in Armageddon's case, oil drillers, and we centre on their many attempts to derail or destroy the asteroid that's approaching Earth. Now Armageddon has a much more of a driven narrative, where we get to know the heroes, we see them train, and then we see the last gasp attempt to save the world. So there is much more of an urgency, a much more escalation as we progress throughout the story. With Deep Impact, it's established pretty much halfway through that the end is inevitable. There's no race against time here, there's no last minute laser ray that will destroy the asteroid and save everybody. So the second half of the film is much more of a struggle to accept fate, appreciating what's most important in life. It's much more emotional and we have much more smaller story arcs with the characters rather than a singular world-saving narrative. And whilst it may seem a bit more slower paced and a bit ponderous at times, as some character plots aren't quite as compelling as others, Deep Impact story is overall much more rewarding and involving and overall satisfactory, and that's why I give the nod to that particular film in terms of the story. We then look at cinematography, and I think we have to give the nod here to Armageddon. Much more in terms of CGI and effects, it's clearly superior, especially when we look at the approach within the asteroid. In the second half of the movie, where it's very large scale and visually striking at times, much more vibrant in terms of colour and energy. Now Deep Impact doesn't look terrible at all by any means, it's far less bombastic and exaggerated, and of course this was by design because of its much more mature approach. It does at times have that television look about it, and some of the CGI hasn't aged as well when we look at particularly the tsunami scenes as we see New York being submerged in water. The effects here don't look as good, especially if you compare to the scenes that what we saw from A Day After Tomorrow. We then continue along the similar line where we talk about action and spectacle, and again we have to give it to Armageddon here, where the second hour of the movie is literally non-stop action. The pacing and spectacle doesn't let up, though the frenetic pacing can be too much at times, which we'll get to in a minute. Now to be fair, Deep Impact handles its sequences quite well. When we do get the climatic event of the asteroid arriving, it's quite terrifying. It's much more of a silent horror as we see the devastation hit, where we don't get any musical score, again giving it much more of a realistic feel. And if we're going to compare the direction and staging in terms of filmmaking, then Deep Impact definitely wins this time round. It's far more measured in setting its tone and its moments. Again, while some may find it slow, it really gives the viewer time to settle into the story, immersing you into the events and really engaging you into what's going on. Especially when we talk about the last 15 to 20 minutes, where you really feel the weight and pathos. As the comet hits Earth, you're really hooked into what's going on, particularly with the emotions felt by the characters. And that's a real skill in making sure that the spectacle is clear and impactful. Now Armageddon is a hyperactive ADHD direction on steroids. It's super paced even for Michael Bay's standards, who's always infused a high energy into his movies, but this is hectic even for him. The film in its second half is full of dizzying fast cuts and lens flare and explosions and loud speeches and monologues. You literally get a headache watching it, and it does become unwatchable at times. And most of this flaw is down to Michael Bay's lack of direction in terms of poise and sophistication. We then talk about characterization, and it's really a non-contest here. Deep Impact wins by a clear distance. In fact, the big focus and its strength of the movie is in its characters, who really feel genuine and believable. You completely empathise with all of their situations, seeing their different reactions. That really gives you much pause for thought as to what exactly would you do if faced in a situation like this. We get to see all of the emotional distress that they go through, but it's never overreactive or manipulative. It feels honest, and there's a real sincerity and integrity from all of the characters, whether it's Morgan Freeman's stately president to Robert Duvall's experienced astronaut. And these type of characters really bring a typical gravitas to the overall movie. And once more, we talk about the last 15 to 20 minutes where we really see the heartfelt separations and goodbyes. It really does resonate. Everything is bolstered as well by James Horner's evocative music, leaving you really sympathising with these characters and the experience that they go through. Now, Armageddon, on the other hand, we look at the characters and they're really one-note caricatures. Any likability is much more from the actors that are playing them rather than the characterisation itself. And I do suppose there is a certain banter and humour and dynamic established in the first half of the movie where we see the assembling of the team. There is a certain entertainment to be had, but again, the fast pace that the film moves at again really leaves you disengaged, especially in the second half, from really trying to invest in the characters as we see what happens to them. Yes, there is some sort of heartbreaking climax at the end, a sense of sacrifice, a certain tension throughout the stage of the film, but it's so forced and overblown, and again, it doesn't have nowhere near the same resonance that what we see with Deep Impact. So we then talk about the box office, and Armageddon is the clear winner here, grossing over $553.7 million from a $140 million budget. It easily went on to become the top grossing movie of 1998. Now, Deep Impact, whilst coming in second, still was a sound financial success, grossing over $349.5 million from a much lower budget of around $80 million, overall becoming the 6th highest grossing film of the same year. We then finished the debate on legacy and impact, and in this aspect, whilst in the short term, Armageddon was much more famous and renowned because of its larger scale, more marquee names, and of course, Aerosmith's song I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. And despite gaining good critical reception, Deep Impact was kind of a forgotten entry and very much underrated. But later on, after time, people I think have come much more to appreciate the values of Deep Impact, again in terms of its characterisation and the real emotional weight that a film achieves again in its second half. And by the same token, Armageddon really hasn't been looked upon that fondly. Most now recognise it as much more of a brainless popcorn blockbuster, maybe disposable entertainment, but nowhere near the lasting resonance again than what we saw with Deep Impact. And alongside much more stronger characterisation and a much more emotional weight and substance, this is overall what I believe that Deep Impact is the superior movie. So that's my overall thoughts and feelings and latest movie face-off between Deep Impact and Armageddon. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you have any other suggestions regarding 2 other films that you'd like to see me do a comparison of, or any other movies or television series, or any other topics within the pop entertainment and culture scene that you'd like to see me cover, also let me know in the comments and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please also hit like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.